and sort of let people know what they might expect. But who here has really noticed and paid attention and followed UpDocs on the New York Times website? Yes, okay. Any favorites that you want to mention that have stood out for you?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Yes, anybody who, UpDocs that you've seen and remembered and thought about? Yes, back here.
Oh, I Destiny. Yeah, that was a really popular one, very special. For those of you who aren't sure what she's referencing, it's a sort of a meditation by an African-American girl in Durham whose brother is incarcerated in sort of a questionable circumstances, and just sort of what that does to a family and also to her.
Interesting. Yeah. Anybody else have one they remember? Yeah, I think, and maybe just. So how many UpDocs are produced? Well, first of all, let's start with when did it start? You've been working with the Times for how long?
I'm going to my 6th year in October. Yeah, and I've actually been with UpDocs since its conception. So it was started in October 2011 by the editorial department of the Times. So it's out of the opinion section rather than the news section, and it basically was started with the mission to expand written op-eds into ideally beautiful, cinematic, and thought-provoking, opinion-based documentaries.
Mm-hmm. So, and you approach filmmakers, yes, you...
It works both ways. At UpDocs, we always like to say that our best ideas come from the filmmakers. So as coordinating producer, a big part of my job is to take submissions and vet them. Often pitches will come to us in the rough cut stage, so kind of basically a rough film, and then we heavily produce them. So that would be the case with all the films that you see here. But so I take the initial pitches and decide if they potentially be a fit for us, and then if we do decide to run them, I see them through the production process.
So you don't get submitted, or do you get submitted finished pieces at all?
We do. One of these films that you'll see today, it's about an orange peeler in the Bronx, or an orange seller, but it focuses on the craftsmanship of how he peels them, which I never would have come up with on my own, and yet when we saw it, we knew it would be a wonderful UpDoc. That was one that we didn't really have to change very much because it was, it was like 2 minutes and it was just perfect the way it was.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes an idea is pitched, and then you work with the filmmaker to help coordinate the production and make sure that it's sort of produced to the standard and with the expectations that you have for it. Yeah,
that works on a case-by-case basis. Often, for example, with the transgender piece that you'll see today, it was by a woman who just had fantastic access to the film, to the couple that she was profiling. It was an openly transgender couple serving in the military, which at the time of the film making, they were barred from serving. So she had that idea, and no other filmmaker could have come up with it. Generally, however, we do hope to see cuts of films before we move forward, unless it's a filmmaker that we've worked with before.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever go to a set where it's being produced, or ever go on location with people?
We have started to get into that. There's one series that some of you may have seen here, but we're not showing today. It's called Verbatim, and it's dramatizations of legal transcripts. And that one, the first one that we did, was called What is a Photocopier? And it was about the semantics that take place during legal depositions. Because a man keeps saying Xerox, well, he keeps saying it's a photocopier, and actually he means Xerox. And making the lawyer taking the deposition utterly exasperated. That is one that, since that was so popular and the filmmaker found other great transcripts, we then helped him do the shooting, and we did go to that. We set him up in the YouTube studios down in Manhattan, but generally the filmmakers do it all on their own, and then we just give them production notes.
Mm-hmm. What is your goal with the series? I mean, when it started, what was the impetus for it, and as it's developed, what do you see it achieving for the Times?
Sure. Well, I think when UpDocs started it was a real experiment. No news media organization like the New York Times, certainly no newspaper, had kind of taken that risk and gotten into documentary. But we had a wonderful and tremendously influential op-ed page, and OpDocs was started to again expand that mission and kind of give filmmakers or their subjects the opportunity to do what the written word really cannot, and do it through video, so you can actually see the ideas or see the story unfold before your eyes rather than just read about it. The main goal of OpDocs has always been to start a conversation among our viewers, much like an op-ed. And so through that, we really want to spark emotion. I hope that will occur in at all of the films that you watch today through different ways. It can be something quite menial, or a forbidden love story, or a story, as you'll see, of parents hoping that their children will stay safe.
Mm-hmm. Great. And the length of them, is there a maximum length that you sort of work with?
Yeah, we work with the Academy, the body that governs the Oscars. So OpDocs can be anywhere from 1 to 40 minutes. And at this point, we're also, in addition to just short films, OpDocs are also encompassing interactives and also virtual reality films. So the guidelines for that can be a little different.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
All OpDocs are available on NewYorkTimes.com/OpDocs. But you're welcome. And then we also, I should plug this, because my boss told me to, but we have a newsletter where you can sign up and then you'll get a notification with every OpDoc that we send out. You can find that at you just Google OpDocs, you'll find it there.
How many do you produce in the course of a week or a month? Is there a general goal for that? Yeah.
Our general production rule, which we changed by case basis this fall due to the election cycle, we were trying to publish on Tuesdays, but we generally publish every Tuesday, once a week. And again, that has gotten us up to about, we published our 200th film. It was by Earl Morrison in May, the smallpox vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Great. And you can also go online and see the archive, yes? You can access...
Yeah, we've itemized them both by series and also by, we just make them like their channels, so season 1, season 2, season 3, and then we have a number of series, like our Animated Life series, which is a series about science through paper puppets that are very beautiful. Also that Verbatim series, which is our dramatization of legal depositions, and any number of other series. Mm-hmm.
And do you work with a team? Do you have how many people work in your particular department?
Yeah, so we're actually quite small. It's myself, the coordinating producer, so again, my job is to vet the pitches, and then there's the executive producer. Her name is Kathleen Lingo. She couldn't be here today, but her job is to just kind of just ensure the quality of the series overall. And then we have a supervising editor who we just hired, so he's quite new, but his background is in editing, of course, and he gives notes on all of the films.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think the Times felt this was a good step to take?
Well, I think with all of print media right now, the Times in particular, we no longer view ourselves as a print media organization. We view ourselves as a news media organization, and our opinion report in particular is very popular with our viewers. And again, I think that the written word is wonderful, but there are some things that it can't do. And I think that's actually been a great way that we do assess all of our pitches is sometimes documentary filmmakers will come to us and say, look, this is a really important story, but sometimes that should be told by the written word. But in other cases, video and just really seeing something does what words can't. And I think the Times recognize that, and it's been successful. We've gotten 1 Oscar nomination, 1 Oscar shortlist, 6 Emmy nominations, 2 Emmy awards, both for new approaches, which we were particularly excited about, and a number of other awards. And I think for the New York Times to have a byline in the Oscars at this point is pretty groundbreaking. I think it's a media story in its own right.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, do you think that the use of video on the Times website will expand in any way? Or do you think that this is sort of the primary location for it right now, and that's working well, and therefore,
The Times is very eager to expand its video journalism. I think actually for news journalism, it's challenging because we have more obvious competitors there who already do exactly what they do extremely well, and we're still figuring out exactly what our mission is in the newsroom and how we want to accomplish that. With OpDocs, we've actually been really fortunate to have a very clear mandate. It's make excellent documentaries by outside contributors who are already outstanding filmmakers or emerging filmmakers, but who have a terrific story. or film to give us, and to start a conversation among viewers. That's a very clear mandate. That, and also, of course, to win awards and really create those beautiful films that are festival worthy, in addition to just news driven. And I think that's another thing that makes OpDocs stand out is our films in the media industry, we call them evergreen. They're not tied to news. And I think that's actually all the films that I'm showing are relatively recent, because I thought that would be nice, but we routinely screen films. Some of our favorites we created in 2011, and they still have value. For the newsroom, it's a little more challenging, and so they're figuring out what to do there.
Mm-hmm. For the newsroom to create video of their own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With the Times, from our newsroom, all of our work comes from internal Times contributors. So traditionally that's a print journalist. These days it can also be a video journalist, but that's changing. But they wouldn't generally, like Errol Morris could not create a film for the newsroom.
Right.
It wouldn't be possible.
So when we see on the Times a video account of a rally, a Trump rally, I mean, there was recently the one about violence at Trump's rallies. That was not an OpDocs.
That was not an OpDoc. However, you will be seeing an OpDoc on the same topic fairly soon, and it will actually be really interesting to compare how the two work. I mean, you guys probably haven't all seen it here, but that piece of video journalism was very expository. There was very little point of view on it.
Right.
But in this piece, it'll be really trying, in our OpDocs piece in the same topic, it'll be really trying to get into what's driving these Trump supporters. Like, what are their stories? Like, what message do they want to share? Well, not necessarily taking their side,
right.
but really getting into that point of view.
Yeah, the piece that appeared sort of had no beginning, no middle, and no
Exactly.
end.
It was just almost like, this is the wrong word, but it was documenting, but without any sort of point of view on it. And I think that is what where OpDocs has really stood out, is that it can have that point of view, and it can have an opinion, and it does give viewers something to react to.
Right. Cool. Well, should we look at some, and then we can have some conversation with the audience too. Why don't we do that?
Obviously, but there was just something about this one where you just can't turn away, and I think that you can almost get numb to some of the the various images that we're seeing. They're really, you don't want to, but you can. And there was just something about this. The filmmaker is I think she's only 25 years old, but she's Greek. She just graduated from the University of California, Berkeley School of Journalism. And just had amazing access. And I think the thing that was most striking to us about this is that it was just one day in Greece. And just this,
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing, yes.
I'm just wondering what, to your mind, they said an OpDoc and said this is great doc.
No, that's a great question. From our perspective, it's told from the point of view of the Coast Guard agent, and you just kind of get a look at what's going on through his eyes. And so I think what really struck us about this, not only the extent that you really care about the refugees and the migrants, but that you really see what's going on with him without having to actually say it. And then also, of course, the artistry. It's incredibly cinematic. It's very beautiful, and it's just simply not a news documentary.
And also, OpDocs is your brand. I mean, that's also true. In other words, there's not really another place at the Times for this.
Yeah, this could never run in our culture desk.
So that what is happening, I mean, we talked earlier about who your competition is. Who do you see as being your competition?
Well, since OpDocs was started in 2011, there have been some other outlets that have started competing or imitating outlets such as The Guardian. Also, The New Yorker has created a more kind of cinematic video series. I don't think it has a name. CNN. But nothing that has kind of quite the same cohesive kind of point of view and mission that ours does.
Right. So this is a longer piece than is customary.
Exactly, because this one is one that we're in particular interested in submitting for awards, and it was and those tend to be around like 20 minutes or so. And this it did come to us in around about 30 minutes, and so we did slice off eight minutes or so, but we just couldn't cut more. It was every piece was so important.
And I would imagine that that UpDoc's beginning as very short form, minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, as it starts to develop momentum, then to do an occasional longer piece is going to be of more interest to your viewers because they're used to this sort of cycle that's beginning to develop, and it allows you to make fuller statements. And
exactly. Every once in a while a topic does merit a deeper dive, and we really felt that this one did.
Right. Yes, Marianne.
So why couldn't you run this as a news documentary where it is documenting what happens in one day? Sure, it's cut, but why is it an opinion piece? A news piece?
I mean, in this particular case, it was really the filmmaking. Well, first of all, it's the point of view that's really being told from the perspective of this man. You're really following one person and his struggles as he, is basically a hero or a Christ figure or basically a hero in this particular film. But also, it's just the artistry of the filmmaking makes it just more than a news video for us. For sure.
So it's structured creatively. I mean, even in terms of the juxtaposition of the couple that's having whatever drinks on the patio, juxtaposed to the boat. I mean, it's a more shaped piece, whereas a straight news piece might just show the getting of people onto the boat, and it might even follow through to the kid maybe that didn't. But it's also because this is your silo, and so this is where you are developing your voice and the kinds of films that you want to be associated with what you're doing.
Yeah, I think in a news piece it would rely more heavily on text cards and information, and in this it's really relying on your emotion and pulling you in, and also the very artistic style of the filmmaking.
And it's trying to position you through the eyes of the captain there.
Exactly, yeah.
And so where a news piece would seek to be more objective.
Mm-hmm. It would tell you about it and let you make your own decision. In this case, it's kind of challenging you to really empathize with what the captain is doing. And
you have print pieces that also create point of view.
Yeah.
As you say, it's sort of part of your op-ed overall department. We've all read pieces in the Times that are personal, that are first person, that are meant to establish that kind of perspective. But this is simply the video part of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one goal of OpDocs is we want OpDocs to stand alone without relying on print journalism or print op-eds, but at the same time we are moving increasingly. We did this with our first VR OpDoc called The Click Effect, which is about we call it the secret communication style through clicks of dolphins and whales. And we used, we had a Sunday review piece by one of the filmmakers who was also a celebrated author named James Nestor, and so he made a very standalone but fascinating essay about the same topic. So taken together, they were a fascinating package. But again, each stood alone.
Yeah, good. Other questions? I saw a couple of hands. Yes.
Where do you draw the line between a music track or not?
So music track or not?
I mean, I wouldn't say that we have particular lines that we draw. We take each piece on its own. How did you feel about this particular piece?
Well, I like it, but it just adds a whole level of emotion. And do you cut to the music, or do you put the music in afterwards?
They generally come, the filmmaker came up with that. We generally leave that to the filmmaker unless we have a particular objection. But I suppose that also speaks to kind of what makes it this opinion documentary versus a news piece, where we are letting music and other kind of artistic elements suggest how you should feel and kind of build your emotion.
I think right here you got a question. Yes. Yes, you. Sorry.
So, were you pitched this piece, or did you help shape that, or did it come?
Yeah, so as I said before, it came to us in a 30-minute, it was about 30 minutes long. It was already excellent. Like, as soon as I watched it, I thought, I mean, all you have to do is get to that scene of the baby being held upside down, and you'd have to be a human not to want to see more and really to feel like it deserved an audience. But in this particular case, several of the advisors on her project at the University of California, Berkeley have worked with us before, so they got it to our attention as well. I mean, the filmmaking community is quite intimate. And so we watched it and we cut it down, and this is the result.
Yeah, in the back, yes. Yes, right, you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't. Yes, you, sorry.
Do the filmmakers get any kind of remuneration? I mean, it costs a lot of money to make a film, so.
Yeah, oftentimes filmmakers will make their films, we call it well, everything for opinion for the New York Times in general is on spec, which means that it's kind of up to you to make it, and unfortunately we don't guarantee publishing and we pay a small stipend afterwards. In this particular case, because it was so long and because it was excellent, I think we went a little bit over on our budget. I mean, generally we start at $1,000 and we go from there. But the same with op-eds, we pay about $150, I think. So you're really not being paid in money. You're really getting the platform. And yeah, so I think in this case, and also additionally, we do partner with various foundations at this point to help connect our filmmakers with foundations that might want to fund a topic that they're making a film on.
So, Tracy, what way, how did that partnership work? Were you answers or something from 30 minutes?
She cut it down. We just gave her notes.
She asked whether the New York Times brought in editors to cut it down, and the answer is that the filmmaker cut it down.
But yeah, we don't do the edits in-house. That's the New York Times opinion model, is we kind of give directions, and then the artist creating the work, be it written or film, they do it themselves with their team.
Yeah. Charlie.
Jay or Lindsay, I was struck by, at the very end, you gave a little factoid of 600,000 coming to Lesbo in 2 years, and it suggests to me that there's a whole opportunity, handed back to the news department to kind of fill out the story. And I'm wondering, are you seeing that, kind of the film that creates the desire to really get the full objective news story?
Well, our news department has actually been covering the refugee crisis.
I know that, but I just wonder, in terms of your placement online, do you then feed them backstories that...
The news department and the opinion department, we don't speak to, we're separate by design, so we don't always speak to each other in that way. It would almost look like a conflict if we were to do that, but we, if there were news, for example, if there were a crisis on top of the crisis in the Mediterranean, we might all publish the same piece all at once and certainly cross-promote in that way.
And certainly the motivation to take the piece grows out of the print reporting that's been done over a period of months.
Yeah.
Because then it creates a new dimension to the understanding of this issue, very much so, yeah.
I'm interested in, you've talked a lot about awards and how the organization wants to win awards, but you're going for sort of traditional filmmaking awards, and I was wondering if you could speak a little about that and why that's a goal for you, and if you're essentially starting what makes it different from, I don't know, basically starting a documentary studio.
I mean, in some way,
Could you repeat the question?
Whether what the New York Times is doing is actually creating a documentary studio where awards like Emmys and Oscars are part of the business plan or the overall goal of the program.
in many ways, we are almost a small production studio, which is extremely novel for an outlet like the New York Times. Our newsroom is also going for those awards through its own video desk, but due to the limitations and the kind of work that they have to do, their opportunities are more narrow. This year, I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier, but the news and documentary Emmys, they created a separate category called Outstanding Short Documentary, because with our works in particular, we weren't new approaches anymore. Our new approaches is documentary, so we had nowhere to put them. So in that way, we are interested in the traditional awards. That is a space that we're interested in competing in, and that we have been able to so far.
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, it took a couple of years for Netflix and Amazon to be considered within the Emmy categories, for example. It's sort of a similar dynamic, that we're expanding the number of producers that would be considered under traditional, which would be traditionally legacy media, is now very much expanding. So, yeah.
So you're submitting this piece for Oscar consideration. On what levels? What awards would this be?
Well,
So, in other words, in what category is this being submitted for Oscar consideration?
How much would this be New York Times? How much would be the New York filmmaker?
Well, the New York Times would be the producer, and the filmmaker would be the artist.
For best short documentary.
So short documentary, which is an existing form, and this existing category, yes.
Is this only available to subscribers to the Times online service?
No, actually, our videos are not behind the paywall. Much of our print journalism is, but video you can just reach through the special OpDocs channel.
Back there, yeah.
So who retains the rights?
We have a 30-day exclusive and then a joint copyright in perpetuity. So the filmmaker can do whatever they want with it after 30 days, as long as they tell us.
For $1,000.
But if the filmmaker continues to generate other revenue, the filmmaker gets 50% of that revenue.
Yeah. I'm just saying our fees start at $1,000. We pay on a case-by-case basis.
Is that going to stay a little piece, or you guys are series, or do you revisit something potentially?
Well, yeah, we do series. As I was mentioning before, we have a number of series, and actually the Times is very interested in finding sponsors for series right now, for video series, so that's something that we're always on the lookout to do. Generally, the way that our series begin is a filmmaker will make one short and it will be wildly popular, and then we'll see that there's demand for this, and we'll want to go and not necessarily commission them, because we rarely commission, but encourage them to create more pieces along the same lines. So we've done that with a number of our popular, non-popular series.
Sandy.
Have you ever had a piece, you said that it needed to end down in that piece that we just saw, which is incredible. But have you ever had a piece where it's been short and you encourage somebody to lengthen before you do this consideration? Or is that not possible with a documentary format, but I mean, somebody did it hard or something?
So if somebody came in with a 3-minute piece and you felt that it could justify 10 minutes, do you ever move in that direction?
That's rarely a way that editors move, but I find that, and I think I speak for most people when I say that I think shorter is much more difficult to do than long. So generally we often help people restructure, but it rarely turns out longer than what comes to us originally.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So maybe one more question, yes.
That was a good enough question for the last one.
Well, we'll take one more after you. Okay, fine.
Would you be willing to share your education and career background and what you did before you came to this?
Yeah, sure. So I went to Harvard, studied history, and so just an undergrad, and that was actually really terrific journalistic preparation. That my background is in journalism. Worked for a number of writers and reporters on their books before I wound up coming to the Times. I was Bill Keller's assistant, and he was the executive editor there. And from there, that was right when we started our OpDoc series. I started working on it from the very beginning, just kind of vetting submissions, doing all the fact checking. That's another really important thing that all of our OpDocs undergo, just because the Times does run formal corrections, so we kind of work as a safety net to make sure that everything is correct. So I was working on that, and then since the series wound up being popular, I just kept on working on it, and got promoted from there. So really, it's just been OpDocs, but all at the time.
Jasper.
What role in general has the OpDocs and the New York Times video channel played in generating ad revenue? I mean, I'm sure you guys get more money for like a car commercial that's a video as opposed to a banner. I was just wondering how that all is working.
Yeah, video is regarded as a critical element of the Times' expansion moving forward. Obviously, print is not where we're getting as much money from these days. So I think OpDocs is an example of what's working, and it is making money for us. We can't go into numbers, but it really is page views, and that's what's getting us ad revenue right now, but video is a big part of that.
So this would likely run with a trailer before it that's an ad.
Generally,
video
yeah.
And OpDocs generally, yeah.
Yeah, and increasingly for some of our series, and also for our VR, for example, we're able to get a sponsor for it on its own, which is a really big deal for us.
I mean, it's significant. Sometimes, the New York Times video ads are beautiful, often. They're very well produced. And sometimes I may not be interested in the product, but I'll let it run because I know that if I either click on it or let it run, it generates more revenue for the Times.
Yeah, no, it's good.
If you skip it right away, then they get nothing out of it. And so we all, tomorrow we're going to have a panel that Lindsay is going to be a part of that will convene around 3 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, we're showing page 1 inside the New York Times, a documentary film about a feature-length documentary that goes into the sort of behind the scenes at the Times, includes editors and David Carr, writer in certain departments, you get a sense of what's happening. And then Hamilton Boardman, do you know Hamilton?
I don't actually.
Yeah, Hamilton Boardman was a senior news editor at the Times, will be on our panel along with Lindsay, also John Nichols from The Nation, also Juliette Warner from The Daily Show, John Van Housen from Vermont Public Radio, also Paula Radley from 7 Days, and Angela Lynn from the Addison Independent. So we'll be going and talking about sort of new directions in media in general, of which this is, I think, a very important part of it. But I mean, clearly we know legacy print journals are challenged hugely, and they're so vital at this particular time in our history as much as any time. And, you know, the Times has sort of by default pretty much become a national newspaper in many ways, and continues to maintain international reporting where a lot of papers have dropped it, blah, blah, blah. So this mix and this sort of reconfiguration actually becomes very important to the next steps for the New York Times, for one, and for an informed public and, you know, journalism in general, I think. So that's why we wanted to try to focus some light on it this time, because this is all in process right now, quite.
Yeah, I think it's testament to the strength of our leadership right now that they are willing to take these risks and make these experiments. Like, I said this earlier, but OpDocs really began as an experiment. No one knew it was going to work. There was very little investment in it at the beginning. And because it did work, that's when it took off. There have been many things that, you know, we have retired when they haven't proved as successful. But I think the fact that we're trying and that we're that the experiments, some of them are working, is really exciting and a good harbinger of ideally what can happen in the next generation of online journalism.
I'll give you, I'll share a tidbit that maybe I shouldn't, but anyway, I mean, Hamilton Boardman, who's a senior news editor at the New York Times, is actually also, he's the son of an innkeeper in Marlborough, where I've been staying for the last 18 years when I go down to teach. But anyway, regardless, I once said to Hamilton, it's probably 2 or 3 years ago, I said, what are the 3 most important words to consider when considering the future of the New York Times? He said, The Guardian, The Wall Street Journal, and video. Seeing The Guardian and The Wall Street Journal as sort of principal competitors, essentially. And it's interesting that Guardian becomes considered a principal competitor of the New York Times.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating evolution, even in the 5 or 6 years that I've been there, to kind of see who's percolated to the top and
yeah,
you know, ideally who will stay.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Lindsay. We'll